Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how to create a mind map. And now you want to start with the title of your theme or your subject. So in this case I'm going to do messages, which was an AQA past exam paper question. It just gives you messages and then it gives you a little bit more information, but really you can come up with whatever you want from this word. So firstly, try not to think about it from too much of a visual perspective of what you want something to look like. Just think about, write down any ideas around messages. So messages, you might think like text messages, for example. And then off of that I might think, okay, social media, what else might you link to text messages? You might think maybe other forms of messaging someone, so maybe like more old-fashioned forms, letters, notes. That might lead to something else. So the idea is that you're going to keep branching off of here. So notes makes me think of, and letters, I could put 2 arrows, both going to like love notes or something. So the more you get into it, you're going to have like maybe a particular theme or idea that you want to go with. So that might then branch off into I don't know, maybe more of a visual representation of how you want your art to look. So maybe you've seen something already, or you've got a kind of idea in your mind of how you want something to look, and you might maybe expand that and put something down from there. So you might even link it to something like a story like Romeo and Juliet. Maybe you're studying that in English or something like that, and you might want to kind of link that in. So Romeo and Juliet, maybe that will bring off some other stories. Just maybe type in romantic novels. And then off of these other things you can keep going as well. So sometimes you just write them as you think of and then come back to them. So social media, you might want to look at, I don't know, maybe kind of messages that aren't very nice, or maybe you want to try and promote more positive messages on social media or something. So maybe you could write positive versus negative. And you might even link that to something like body image or something, like horrible things that people say about each other. Maybe you want your artwork to sort of convey this, or even create something more positive from it. Maybe you want to do a project on like body image and how everyone is different or something. That might be your project. So you move away from the idea of messages and you start to go towards something else. So that's just come from just text messages. So what would not be a good example of messages is if you just put one idea coming out multiple times and think that's it. That's not really showing a massive range of thoughts. And the whole point with this mind map is that you want to really show your original thoughts. So you don't want to have the same thing as everyone else. You want to genuinely sit there and come up with your own ideas. And I'm not going to use all of these ideas necessarily for the project that I might be doing, but you would at least come up with lots and lots and lots of ideas, and then maybe just choose one of them, or you have a couple of things, or maybe one branch that you're going to focus on. So messages, text messages. Kind of on that note, where I was thinking about the romance, it could be like message in a bottle. That might be messages at sea. Maybe if you like painting and drawing landscapes and seascapes and things, you might want to have that as a focus. Maybe you do seascapes, shipwrecks. So we're going down a completely different route from messages to how we did before, but they're still all linked together. And I'm showing the process of how I've how I've done that to the examiner. So the examiner's going to see, right, they've taken this idea and then they've really changed it and interpreted it into their own idea. So message in a bottle, could I have anything else coming off there? You might think of like maybe tea staining old letters. Lost, maybe lost at sea. Could this lead to something else? Lost somewhere else? Lost people? In general, could that lead somewhere else? Lost people? Messages to family or something like that? I don't know, these are just ideas at the moment. Could you also have, and I could still have things coming off of here as well, so actually I've forgotten, let's do tea, or maybe I'll come back to that in a minute. Tea staining old letters, old versus new messages. Maybe you look at the way people write, like a sort of timeline of message styles. So maybe you have work about how people used to send messages to each other versus how people send messages now, like old versus modern day, something like that. Messages also, you know, this is a great topic because you can really think about how you're trying to convey messages. So what messages could you want try and get across in your work? So it could be something to do with climate change, like environment. Do you look at pollution? Do you look at pollution in the sea? And then from the sea, could we write things like turtles, nets, plastic? You know, we're getting more and more specific. And this is just an A4 piece of paper. You could see that I could potentially go on for longer than that. So you might even want to use a double page in your sketchbook rather than one single page. And you could just do this as a draft and then copy it up, or you could just go for it straight away. It's not, the idea of it is not to try and be really neat or anything. It's not to try and make it look pretty. It's just you're genuinely trying to get your ideas down, and you might highlight and circle things that you particularly like the look of. So also on that environment, could I go somewhere else with it? So that's pollution, but could we look at littering? You know, so you've got different things. Littering, could you maybe even put in some more practical outcomes? So photograph local area, for example, and you know, and draw from those and create something like that. Littering, there's also, reminds me of a Banksy piece of work where he's recreated an old Monet painting and put a shopping trolley in the pond in the stream. So you might look at that artist and think, well, I'm going to try and recreate that. So if you do think of any arty ideas as you're going along, then of course that would be great, like the tea staining, and just more and more towards as you get towards the outside, that's when you kind of should be coming up with your more creative ideas. Other messages, so could you do maybe think of things like campaigns? That's kind of similar, these two kind of link. So could you almost create like almost a campaign for people to stop littering or something like that? But what other ideas? Could it be against bullying? Or, I don't know, domestic abuse or something, or any of these things, and then you might have things coming off of it. I've had a student before do this, and they looked at kind of like bruising on the face and domestic violence or abuse. bruising on the face and kind of like outside versus inside, kind of how they portrayed themselves on the outside versus how they felt on the inside. Sorry, my camera just died. But yeah, so that's basically how you do it. So you want to start with these initial ideas and keep going, and just as soon as you think of an idea, keep expanding and expanding further and further, and then you might actually get a sense of actually what you're more interested in. So it might be that you're interested in more this idea of pollution in the sea, and then the next step is to do a mood board where you're actually going to go, you know, look on Pinterest for some actual ideas visually, and then I'll show you in another video how to do that and how to actually look and create a mood board based on messages from your mind map. And you're going to need the mind map first in order to do that.